Hello everyone, welcome back. For today's class, we will be dealing with I believe that books will never disappear, one of my favorites. This is an interview between Jorge Luis Borges and Roberto Alifano. So, Jorge Luis Borges is was an Argentine, South American short story writer, and then he was born in Buenos Aires. So, he's a writer, he's an essayist, he's a translator, and then his work embraces the character of unreality. Unreality is nothing but irrealism, where he talks more about things that are not realistic, which cannot be scientifically explained and all. So he talks about things like this. And then his famous books are Fictionis and The Elf. So these books are nothing but his collection of short stories. And then he talks about the common themes in his works. The common themes in his works are about dreams, how humans dream or what these dreams are. He talks about that. Labyrinth is nothing but a maze in which you are stuck and you are trying to find a way out. So he talks about labyrinth, he talks about libraries, he talks about mirrors, he talks about infinity, he talks about fictional writers, philosophy, religion, and God. So he talks about all these stuff. And then a little information about Roberto Alifano. He is a journalist. He was also a poet, storyteller, writer, translator, and all. He was born in the General Pinto of Buenos Aires province, in the province of Buenos Aires. And then he has worked alongside Borges for a long time, from 1975 to from 1974 to 1985, he has worked alongside Jorge Luis Borges. So sometimes you might see certain people pronouncing it as Borges, depending upon the fluency or the influence of the native language. It is up to your convenient, but make sure that you know the spelling while you're writing in the exam. And when you're writing in the exam, make sure to write both their names. All right. So this particular chapter is nothing but the interview between Borges and Roberto Alifano. Roberto Alifano is interviewing Borges. So let us start off. I believe that books will never disappear. So Roberto Alifano asks Borges what his first literary reading was. What did he start off reading for the first time? To which Borges says it was Grimm's fairy tales in an English version. Underline this one, definitely will be asked in the exam. So his first literary reading will be Grimm's fairy tales in an English version, and he also adds saying that I was educated by my father's library. More than any high school, more than any universities or colleges, I was educated much by my father's library. You should understand here the importance of books. Alright, so all the knowledge that the university or their high school couldn't give, that was given by the books, he says, the number of books he has had by his father's library. They've asked whose library also in the previous exam, right? So underline father's library. Next, Alifano asks about his mother, that is Donna Leonor. What was the name of Borges's mother? Again, this was asked. Underline, it is Donna Leonor. Donna is nothing but Madam, Mrs. Alright, so Donna Leonor. And then Borges tells his mother, Donna Leonor, was an extraordinary person, and then he tells I should speak above all of a kindness towards me. He tells she was very kind towards me, and then he will confess something which all of us will have deep within our heart. So he tells, I'll tell you a secret of mine. I feel somewhat guilty for not having been a happy man in order to have given her a deserved happiness. So as soon as he asks about his mother, he tells, oh, she was extraordinary, right? And I should speak of her kindness. But somewhere deep within his heart, he will realize that he hasn't been a good son to her because he feels guilty. He has not kept her happy as much as she deserves. I feel guilty. Perhaps I should have been more understanding of her. Then he tells, I should have been more understanding of her. Every time our parents nag, they complain about us. they say that you have not done the work, you're not studying, you're not doing that, you're not doing this, you're failing at that, this. We feel irritated with this behavior, but we fail to understand their concern, their care towards us. We will not take a moment and understand why the mother or the father is telling all these things, right? We jump to the conclusion saying that they don't like us, they're very irritating, they always nag. So, Borges is trying to talk about how humans feel this way, and he tells, but I don't know. I suppose it is true of all children that when our mother dies, we feel that we have taken her for granted, as we do with the moon or the sun or the seasons. Then he tells, it is not only my feeling, I think it's the feeling of all children out there. All the children, once the mother passes away, only then the children will understand the importance of mother. That is when they start feeling guilty, but time is gone, you cannot bring her back, right? So he tells, only after the death of the mother you will understand that you have taken her for granted, right? You have misused, you have abused her in ways, you have misused her kindness, you have misused her trust and all. So he compares and he says, just like how we have taken the moon or the sun for granted, the same way we are taking our mothers for granted. At least now we should understand about the importance of mother, and instead of nagging all the time, you can say that, mom, I do understand what you're trying to tell, but I need some time. Instead of having a hearty conversation, we try to jump to conclusions and do whole lot of other stuff which you will regret later. That is what Borges says here. So just like how you have taken the sun, the moon or the seasons for granted, the same way do not take your mothers for granted. I've already done, many children are doing, but if you have your mother, make sure that you're treating her right. Before our death, it doesn't dawn on us. So he tells, we have abused her with our words, with our actions, with our behavior. We have been abusing her. But then he says, it will not be realized when she is alive. Only after her death, we will understand the importance of her. So when you have certain things, you wouldn't know the value of it. Only after losing that thing or person or anybody for that matter, only then you will realize how important those things were. The same way here, till the mother is alive, you wouldn't understand, but only after the death of the mother, you would understand how important she was and how irresponsible you were when it came to looking after her. And then he adds, my mother was an intelligent and a gracious woman who I believe had no enemies. And then he will conclude saying that she was a gracious woman, she was a very intelligent person, and it's a good thing that she had no enemies at all. She had no enemies because her behavior, her character was that way. So she didn't have any enemies at all. Quick summary of this one. He talks about his mother. His mother's name is Donna Leonor. He tells that she was an extraordinary person who was always kind towards him, and then he feels guilty that he has not taken good care of the mother, and then he compares that with that of the seasons, the sun or the moon. Just like how we have taken other things for granted, the same way we have taken mother for granted. And then he tells, till her death we will not feel how important she is. Only after the death we will try to understand her importance, but by then the time would be very late. And then he concludes saying that his mother was an intelligent woman, and then she was very gracious, and she did not have any enemies at all. So that is a little information about his mother, Donna Leonor. The next question Alifano asks is, please forgive me, Borges, for asking you this. What is blindness to you? Look at the tone in which Alifano is questioning Borges. He says, please forgive me. He apologizes in the beginning itself because he's picking at a thing which is very sensitive. He asks, can you tell about blindness? Borges at the age of 55 will lose his eyesight due to certain medical complications. He will lose his eyesight, and that is why Alifano is asking this question. Look at his tone. Today's journalists must understand the way of journalism, right? So when you're talking about somebody's private personal things, you're supposed to be polite. You should not invade another person's space. right? So Borges says now, from now it becomes quite important. Well, now it is a way of life. So he is accepting his blindness and he says, it has become a way of life. It is a part of my life now. This is all I have. A way of life that is not entirely unhappy. Then he says, you might think that at the age of 55, I've lost my eyesight and I'm leading a very unhappy life. No, he's telling it is not entirely unhappy. It has become a part of my life. It's not entirely unhappy. And then he says, a writer, and I believe generally all persons must think that whatever happens to him or her is a resource. Okay, so he's telling, as a writer or as a person, you should understand that whatever happens to you, the good things or the bad things, they all are nothing but a resource. Resource is nothing but an action adopted. All right, an action adopted for certain circumstances. Suppose something bad happened to me. Am I going to sit and whine about it? Am I going to cry about it? Or am I going to take certain steps and move forward? So that is nothing but a resource. It is left to you. If Borges sat and cried about his eyesight, then he wouldn't have given this interview at all. He achieved something even at the latest stages of his life, even at a very critical stages of his life. That is why he has become an excellent example for others, right? So he tells, whatever happens to you, they must be considered as a resource. Underline this one. Resource is a word you will write in the exam. All things have been given to us for a purpose, and an artist must feel this more intensely. Then he tells, whatever happens to us, the good or the bad, all these things happen to us because there is a purpose. Only if a negative stuff happens, then you will take challenge and continue. All the things that you get easily will have no value at all, right? So you've seen many artists, many singers. Initially, they wouldn't have any success at all, but later stages, when they try, they'll fail n number of times, and then finally, once they will overcome all those failures and reach greater heights, right? So that is what he tells. All the things that will come across in your life, they have been given to us with a purpose. You will definitely have that purpose. And then he says, and an artist must feel this more intensely. An artist, in the previous poem, that is Heaven If You're Not Here on Earth, the last two lines says how a writer will imbibe is nothing but observing the things around him, and then he will spill out the same in the words that he writes. That is how he is creating heaven on earth. The same way here, writer is someone who is a very sensitive being, who would try to observe everything, and then he will pick up those things, observations, and then he will put out very beautifully. So here Borges tells, an artist must feel this more intensely. All that happens to us, everything, every emotion that you come across, they happen to us because there is a reason behind it, including the humiliation, when somebody shames you, when they are being very hurtful towards you, or our misfortunes. Misfortunes are nothing but bad lucks, and our embarrassment, awkwardness, shy feeling, all these things, all is given to us as a raw material, as clay. Underline raw material as a clay. All these things are given to us so that we may shape something beautiful up out of it. So they're given to us as raw materials, right? So all the misfortunes, the embarrassments, the humiliations, they're nothing but the clay through which we can make our art. We are the creators, we are the artists, he said. You'll have two options: either you sit and cry, or you wake up and do something to overcome it. One, it is completely left to you. And then Alifano questions, Homer wrote in the Odyssey, underline this one, the gods wrought and spun the skein of ruin for men, that there might be a song for those yet to be born. So in this Greek mythology, you will come across many stories, right? So the meaning of these lines are nothing but the god will give great people a lot of problems, a lot of misfortunes, humiliations, challenges, so that they will overcome those challenges, failures, and all the negative things, and they will become the example for the new generation, for the upcoming generation. So that is the meaning of this lines. So Homer in his Odyssey, underline, very important. So he tells that God will give a lot of challenges to people so that the newer generation, the upcoming generation, will learn from the previous mistakes. All right. So this is very important. And next, Borges tells, well, it is the same idea. In one of my poems, I say that humiliation, misfortune, discord were given to us so that we may transmute them. Then he tells, yes, even in one of my poems, I've written somewhat similar. I say all these humiliation, misfortune, discord. Discord is nothing but disagreement between two people, quarrel and things like that. So these are given to us so that we may transmute them. Transmute is nothing but change them. Underline. Please do understand the meanings of the words, but when you're writing in the exam, don't write change. Please do write transmute them, so that we may make from the miserable circumstance of our lives eternal works, or works that aspire to be. So he's telling, yes, you should have all these things, because out of this you will do something. Two options again: you will make this very bad, or then you will create a history with this one. So those things he says. And again, an important sentence here, underline this one: a verse from Goethe comes to mind, alles nahe wird fern. That means all that is near becomes far. So the meaning of this one is that things are not the same. There is constant change in the world. Things will change over time. So you will not have daytime throughout the 24 hours span that we have. You will face a lot of other stuff, right? You will not only face summer, you will also have to face winter, you will also have to face the rain, right? So he tells all that is near becomes far. Goethe's work, you have to remember this one, alles nahe wird fern. They had asked this in 2 marks question last year. So underline this one. The meaning is all that is near becomes far. In this word, he refers not only to the sunset but also to life. So not only is he talking about nature, but he is also talking about life, the human life. All things leave us. So you might, in the journey of life, make a lot of friends, but all those friends will not be permanent. They will change over time, right? You will have few friends this year, next year you will lose some, you will make more friends, right? You will lose certain titles, the names that you had, the fame that you have. So he tells all things will eventually leave us. It is not that we are carrying something for the future. Everything will be left. In my case, in Borges's case, he tells the visible world has moved from my eyes surely forever. So he tells, yes, I've lost my eyesight, I can't see things around me, yes, but fortunately it has been replaced by other things. This is the attitude I think all of us must have. You lose something and then you start crying about it, but instead of that you should focus on the greater things, try to move on. And once you try to move on and take this as a challenge, you will come across greater things, more greater than what you had lost. So he tells the visible world has moved, but I still it has been replaced by other good things. My duty is to accept and as far as possible to enjoy those things. Then he tells what my duty is as a human being is to accept whatever I get and then enjoy the little things. How much ever is possible, I'll have to accept and then I'll have to enjoy. I still continue pretending that I'm not blind. I still buy books. I still go on filling my house with books. So that's what he tells. He doesn't believe that he has gone blind. He understands, he accepts it. But then he says, even now, I continue purchasing books. I fill my house with books. Next, Alifano. There is a theme that I'd like for us to speak about, the theme of books. Now, Hital, shall we talk about the subject, the topic of books? Borges says, well, last night, in fact, I had a very strange dream. I dreamed of burning of the great library, which I may have been the Library of Alexandria. Underline this one. With its countless volumes attacked by flames. Do you believe this dream may have some meaning? So Alifano questions whether they could talk about the topic of books. They wanted to talk about books, and Borges tells, last night I had a dream. I dreamt of the great library of Alexandria, okay, so which was in Egypt. So it was burned to ashes. So I had this dream last night. So I can relate this one with the real life Nalanda University, where great number of volumes were attacked, and the books were destroyed through fire. All right, so he talks about, can we, do you think this dream has a meaning? He's questioning Alifano himself now. Do you think this dream has a meaning? And Alifano tells, perhaps Borges, could it be that you owe your readers a book on the history of book? Have you ever thought of writing such a book? Now he's telling, perhaps, maybe, Borges, could it be that maybe you deserve to give your readers a book about history of the books? You should talk about, you should write a book about history of books. Maybe that is what the meaning of the dream is. Have you ever thought of writing about this one? And then Borges says, dear me, no. But it's an excellent idea. He says, no, but it's an excellent idea. It would be wonderful to write a history of book. I'll keep it in my mind. So he says, oh no. First he says no. But then gradually he says, I'll keep this in my mind. Although, and then he continues saying that, I don't know if an 83-year-old man can set such a project for himself. So he's telling, I'm 83 now. I don't think I can do, but I'll keep it in my mind. I'll definitely keep it in my mind. However, I now remember that Sprengler, he was a German polymath. Polymath is, he was versatile. He knew, he had great knowledge about different fields. Okay, in his Decline of the West, underline Sprengler, German polymath, in his work. The book name of the book is Decline of the West. Underline this one. Predates my attempt, for in it he writes remarkable comments on books. So he tells, it's a wonderful idea to write about the history of book, but Sprengler has already written about this in his book called The Decline of the West. Sprengler, Decline of the West. So he has already written about this in his Decline of the West, where he talks about the he comments on the book. So he talks about the books in this work. Alifano says, in one of your essays, you quote the words of Bernard Shaw, who is an Irish playwright. Every book worth being reread has been written by spirit. Right? So he tells, you might have seen in one of the essays. So you quote. So Roberto Alifano is telling Borges that in one of your essays you talk about Bernard Shaw, that is Irish playwright. He talks about this Irish playwright, and then he says every book which is worth being reread has been written by the spirit. That means many of the times what happens is there are certain movies, there are certain books, there are certain songs. You wouldn't want to listen to a certain song twice because you don't like it that much. When you are reading a book, you feel the same thing. You might say that this might be read only once, not more than that. I don't think it is worth it. There are certain movies also you would comment the same. So any book or any movie or anything that is been done by an artist, if you go through them and if you want to take a look at it the second time, that means it is written by spirit. So I'm sure you wouldn't relate it to the books, but let us take example of some of the movies. So if you know the movie Kantara, right? So the first time you watch it, you wouldn't understand as much as you watch it the second time. So you would want to watch it again and again. There is this one book written by Albu Camus. It is called The Outsider or The Stranger. I think that's the only book that I've reread many times because I love the book, and I personally feel like he talks about things. Uh, he talks about absurdism and all, which I wouldn't want you guys to go through. But any book which makes you feel like you have to watch it again, read it again, or any movie that you want to watch it again, that means it has been written by the spirit. So many children, even adults, love Harry Potter. because it is written by the spirit, right? So you know how there are there are goblins, there are trolls, there are giants and all, right? There are, witches and all such things. So people would like all these things. So any book which is worth being reread again and again, if you have the heart to read it one, that means it is written by the spirit. And then Borges answers to this one. He tells, yes, I completely concur with that notion. Concur is nothing but agree, notion is the idea. Since a book goes beyond the author's intention, the author might simply say, there are a lot of reels on this one. Many of you have already sent. If the author says the sun rises in the east, the teacher might have many interpretation of that one sentence. So why is he talking about that? How come this is happening this way? The writer simply says that the sun rises in the east, but then the reader, they might come up with different interpretation for all of them. That is why in literature we say 2 plus 2 can never be 4. Mathematically 2 plus 2 is always 4. It cannot go any ways other than this one. But in literature it can even become infinity, or it can even become negative, positive, exceed 4. So different people try to interpret different things in different ways. The same, if I talk about Harry Potter, different one of you would have different opinions on the same thing. So a book will go beyond author's intention. The author might keep things very simple, but I might interpret in a very different way. Somebody else would interpret, understand it in a very different way. He says the author's intention is a meager thing, a fallible thing. It is lacking quality and quantity. It is not certain. It will change from one person to the other person. In a book, in every book, there is need for something more, which is always mysterious. Then he tells, in every book there is something which is always mysterious. You might have seen where people write something called as fan fiction. After a book ends, they don't want the characters to stop there. So what the readers do is they take the characters and they try to create stories on their own. That is how they are trying to keep the characters alive, the thing going on, right? So he says there is always something mysterious in the books. When we read an ancient book, it is as though we were reading all time that has passed from the day it was written to our present day. You watch any ancient movie, the way they dress, the way they speak, their culture. When you're watching an ancient movie like this, let us take example of Bahubali. So if you're watching this one, it is not as if the protagonist or the antagonist, the hero and the villain, are wearing jeans and they're fighting, right? They're not modernized. They're in that particular era, right? So when you're when you're reading through books that are ancient, then it is as if you're traveling alongside them, right? So he tells, as if you're traveling alongside them. A book can be full of errors. We can reject the author's opinion, disagree with him or her, but the book always retains something sacred, something mortal, something magical, which brings happiness. So you might have different interpretations. When you are reading a historical book, you might come across the history, you will come across the culture, the values, their behavior and everything, and sometimes you will reject their opinion, which is the right of a reader. If he doesn't like what the writer says, he can reject it and no one can say no to that one. And then it can be full of errors, but a book will definitely have something in it which is sacred, something very special, something which is mortal, something which is magical, something which brings happiness. You cannot understand this topic if you are not an avid reader. If you are reading all the time, if you like reading books, then this is one for you. So in the class, if you all remember, I did take examples of movies. So you will have to connect it through the movies, because you guys are not a good reader. You are not good readers at all. So please make the habit of reading books. Start off with the comics. start off with the books that have illustrations that will help you continue reading. Next, important question. Alifano questions Borges, what is poetry? How would you define it? Underline, very important. So Borges says, I believe that poetry is something so intimate, so essential that it cannot be defined without oversimplifying it. The entire paragraph here is very important. All right. So he says, I believe poetry is something so intimate, it is so close, and it is so essential, it is very important, but you cannot define what poetry is without oversimplifying it, without describing every little thing about it. You cannot explain what poetry is. And then for this he takes example, it would be like attempting to define the color yellow. So defining poetry is not as easy. It will be like defining the color yellow, the green, the season autumn, or leaves, fall of leaves in autumn. So it is not as easy. You will have to explain it without, you cannot explain it without oversimplifying it. I believe that poetry is the aesthetic art. Aesthetic is nothing but appreciation of beauty. Poetry is nothing but appreciating beauty. All right, beauty doesn't always have to be a girl is very beauty. No, it might also be abstract things, right? It might also be about how even the gloomy things. It is raining and the mother is sitting out there starving. Even in that condition, she is trying to protect the child. So that is also considered to be an aesthetic art. When you are writing that one very beautifully, that's also considered the aesthetic art. So that poetry is not a poem. So these two words, poetry and poem, he says they're not the same. How? For the poem may be nothing more than series of symbols. Underline this one. Poem is nothing but a series of symbols. Right? You take poem of any language or anything. If you look at a poem just by the words, that means it is simply a poem. It doesn't have anything. Poetry, I believe, is the poetic act that takes place when the poet writes it and when the reader reads it. Underline, very important. Poem is nothing but series of symbols. It is nothing but group of sentences. That's all. But poetry is an act which happens when the writer writes it and when the reader reads it, and it always happens in slightly different manner. We have already studied 2 plus 2 will not be 4 in English. In literature, it will always differ from one to another. So he tells it will change slightly, it will differ when the writer writes it to when the reader reads it. There are some slight differences happening. When the poetic act takes place, it seems to me that we become aware of it. So when you are actually reading the poem, when poetic act is taking place, that is when you will understand it. This example you can take of when the teacher, during the beginning of a poem, a teacher might ask the student to read a poem. That is nothing but poem. You are asked to read, you read it. You read the symbols that are there in the text, right? You are not understanding it. The reading part is nothing but poem. The act of understanding is nothing but poetry. All right. So poetry is something which happens when the reader understands it, when the writer writes it and the reader understands it. When the poetic act takes place, it seems to me that we become aware of it. Poetry is magical, mysterious and unexplainable, although not incomprehensible even. So he tells poetry is very magical. It might take you to different places, different dimensions, right? You might travel across the universe, you might do that, you have this inevitable power, you have all these things, and it will be mysterious. It can be mysterious, it can be unexplainable, you cannot explain what is going on at all, but it can never be incomprehensible even. That means you cannot fail to understand. You will understand what is going on, but it will always be in different manners. If one doesn't feel the poetic act upon reading it, the poet has failed. So when you're reading through the poem, you should feel everything written there, And once you do not feel that one, that means the poet has failed. He doesn't tell the reader has failed to understand. He says that the writer has failed the readers. He is not able to make the readers understand what he has written. So that is about poetry. Poem is nothing but series of symbol. Poetry is the act of reading the poem and understanding it. So poetic act happens when the writer is writing and when the readers are reading. So poetry cannot be explained without oversimplifying it. It is just as you trying to explain the color yellow, the fall of leaves in autumn, things like that. The entire paragraph becomes very important. Please do underline. You might expect this question in the exam. Moving on, Alifano says, what is important in the art of poetry is finding precise words. Again, this becomes important, underline. So he questions, in the process of writing a poem, isn't it necessary to find precise is exact words. So you are supposed to find exact words when you are writing a poem. And Borges replies, to a great extent, yes, it is very essential that you write the exact words. Alright, you should not write synonyms there, should not write meanings there. You are supposed to find out the exact words, the precise words. If not, lose the identity. So that is why he gives an example later. I always remember that wonderful line in poem by Emily Dickinson which can exemplify this. So he takes example of Emily Dickinson's one of her lines that says, this quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies. So the line is, this quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies. Let us understand what this one is. The idea is banal. Banal is nothing but it is lacking originality. So in all the culture, in all other religions, you will understand that ultimately when a person dies, he will be either buried, burnt, cremated, whatever. So what happens then? He will turn into ashes. He will become dust in the end. That's inevitable. We cannot preserve a person as they were when they were alive. So finally what happens is once a person dies, definitely they will become dust. So this idea is banal. Banal means you cannot find the originality. Everywhere it is said. And then he tells idea of dust, the dust of death. That means we will all be dust one day. One day finally we'll have to leave this place and that day we will become dust. So this idea is a cliche. Cliche is something that has been overused, that it has no meaning at all. Okay, so in every religion, everywhere this line is so present. In all the religions, all the countries, all the cultures, this idea is present. So how is it making a difference when Emily Dickinson is telling? So what happens there? He tells, but what surprises this phrase is gentlemen and ladies. How she uses gentlemen and ladies. You wouldn't use a word gentleman to a person who is not disciplined, who is not tidy, right? Who is a gentleman? What are the qualities of a gentleman? So all those good qualities would make you a gentleman. And what about a lady, right? So there are certain qualities. If you go by these qualities, then you are a lady. If not, you are still a girl who are not matured, who are very childish in certain ways and things like that, right? So the use of gentleman and lady is something that is giving a lot of meaning to the sentence. So the original idea that all of us will become dust in the end is there everywhere. It's cliche, it is overused, everyone is using it and it is lacking a lot of originality. But the use of words gentlemen and ladies is making this sentence very important. How? If she had written men and women, it would have failed as poetry. Men and women, everyone is considered as a man and a woman, right? So how is it defined here? That makes a lot of sense. So he tells, instead of using gentlemen and ladies, had she used men and women, then it would have been poetry which has failed. It would have been trivial, which was not important, but Finding the precise words, she wrote, "This quiet gentleman dust was gentlemen and ladies." So instead of gentlemen and ladies, had she written anything, it would have failed. Because she used gentlemen and ladies, that is how it became famous. This is where he answers about the importance of precise words. You are supposed to use exact words. You might expect this one also, but mostly in the exams they've asked poetry, the difference between poem and poetry, but make sure to understand this one also. Next, Alifano questions about, you have said that metaphors exist from our very beginnings. Could you expound on that concept, Borges? So now we're talking about one of the figures of speech that is nothing but metaphor. Metaphor is when you're trying to talk about something, instead of telling that directly, would use a phrase. For example, comparing, when you're comparing. For example, when I say he's as brave as a lion, I'm not implying that he is a lion. I'm not telling that he is an animal. I'm telling that he is very courageous, he is very brave. So that is nothing but and when I say she is a honey, she is as pretty as, when you're trying to compare two things, that is when you use uh, metaphor. And you might sometimes get confused with that of simile. When you're using simile, you should find out the words like and as. When you see these two words, that is when you're talking about simile. And metaphor is when you're comparing, you're not directly talking about that person, but then when you're trying to compare, that is when you have figures of speech. You will learn them later on. So he tells metaphors exist from the beginning, very beginning, that is from the earliest days you will find metaphors. Could you expound? Expound is nothing but explain on that concept. Okay, so Borges says, yes, certainly, I believe that metaphors, if they were truly metaphors, exist from the beginning of time. So he tells, yes, metaphors did exist from the beginning of time, but we express them differently. I have occasionally thought of reducing all metaphors to 5 or 6, which seem to me to be the essential metaphors. So he says, yes, metaphors are there from time immemorial, from very long ago, from the beginning of time, but there are a lot of metaphors. But I think just like there are hundreds of colors, you have primary, how many colors? 7, right? So just like how you have 7 primary colors, the same way there are only 5 to 6 metaphors which are very common, which are basic, which are primary, which are essential. And then Alifano questions, what are those metaphors? Borges tells, time and river, underline, that asks this one, time and a river, life and dreams, death and sleep, stars and ice, flowers and women. So time and river will stop 101. They'll be flowing, they'll be moving. You lose time, you will not get it back. You waste water, in the future you will have to struggle. Life and dream. So there is a thin line between living and dreaming, right? So that one, death and sleep, stars and ice, flowers and women. So all these are basic essential metaphors. There would be, I believe, the essential metaphors that are found in literature. Then there are others that are whimsical. Whimsical means playful. They are very appealing, they are very amusing. Others are also there which are very essential, which are whimsical, that is playful, they are very amusing and all, they are there. But the primary essential basic metaphors are all these things. Underline. Next, the I believe that the poet's task is to discover metaphors even though they may have already have been existed. So he tells it's the duty of a poet to find out more metaphors. Next, Alifano questions Borges. There are people who speak of disappearance of books, that they assert is declare, that modern developments in communication will replace them with something more dynamic that will require less time than reading. What do you think of that? So this becomes the most asked question, the question that we all will have at least once or twice in our lifetime. So you have tabs. tablets, right? Where you will go through them only for the sake of reading books. Instead of purchasing whole lot of books, you can download n number of books and then you can read them. And the animations are so beautiful on these tabs that it'll feel as though you're turning a page. Just as you're turning in the book, the same way you would feel there. And the storage is fine. You can adjust the brightness there. You can highlight your favorite words. It is very convenient when you're reading the book. The people that say they prefer tab more, I don't think they've understood the essence of the actual feeling of reading a book. When you're reading a book, I think you would fall in love with the scent of the book, the yellowness. As the book becomes older, the pages there turn somewhat yellowish, sometimes brown, depending upon the type of paper and the ink used, right? And it will give a very distinct smell. When you go to the libraries, most of the people have this habit of sniffing the books. You've got to be very careful, because if it has accumulated a lot of dust, and then you will be sneezing uncontrollably. But somewhere there is this question of how the modern developments, the technological developments, would replace books. So he's asking, what do you think of this one? And then Borges says, I believe that books will never disappear. This is where the title has come from. So he says, no, it's not possible that books would be disappeared. It is impossible that that will happen. So he says, no, it will be impossible. Among the many inventions of man, the book without doubt is the most astounding. Okay, he says man has created a lot of new things. He has discovered is nothing but find out something which was already present. Invented is something that you create by yourself. All right, so that's the difference between invention and discovery. So he tells, among a lot of inventions that the man, so book is the most astounding inventions of man. It is true that he has created a lot of other stuff. He has invented a lot of new things, but books is the most astounding of them all. The telephone, for example, is the extension of our voice. Then he gives example of how humans have invented stuff which are extension of the bodies. Underline this one, very important. The telephone, for example, is the extension of our voice. The telescope and the microscope are extensions of our sight, vision. The sword and the plow, the one that is used in the battlefield and the ones that you use in the agricultural field. The sword and the plow, both are the extensions of our arms, strength. Only the book is the extension of our imagination. Again, very important. This might be asked, underline. Now, Alifano tells, you state in a memorable passage that literature is a dream. So now he's talking about, can you talk about literature being a dream? And then Borges tells, yes, literature is nothing but dream. He says, literature is a dream. It is a controlled dream. Not all the things that you dream happen there. You have control over what you are dreaming here. And then, it's a controlled dream. Now, I believe that we owe literature almost everything we are, and what we have been, also what we will be. So, literature is something that is the basic foundation for a human being. For example, if you remember, initially when Borges is asked by Alifano what his first literary reading was, he says it is Grimm's fairy tales in an English version, and then he adds, I've been educated more by my father's library than any university, high school or university. So he's telling books are very essential. In that line itself, you should understand how much of value the books have. So he tells it is very essential. For whatever we are today, books are the reason. For whatever we will be in the future or what we were in the past, for all we owe so much to the books. Our past is nothing but the sequence of dreams. Underline, what difference can there be between dreaming and remembering the past? You can do nothing about your past. Now it is done. You can call it anything, dreaming or remembering. You cannot change it, but it is a sequence of dreams, he tells. Books are great memories of all centuries. So you go to a certain century, you take out a book, sorry, you take out a book from a particular century. When you start reading, it is as if you are back in that century itself. That is the power of book, because books are the extension of our imagination, of our memory, right? So uh, their function therefore is irreplaceable. So no tab, no new advancement can replace books. Books will be very important throughout the life, but he says, suppose one day the books disappear, that means surely history would disappear, and if there is no history, that means there is no man at all. Even man would disappear. It is not as simple as it is said. Books can never be replaced, or they will never disappear. They will remain, and one day if it has to come and one day if the books will disappear, that means surely history will be gone and humans also would disappear. So that is all about, I believe books would never disappear. Have any doubts or any clarifications that you need, please do reach out and study this chapter. It is a beautiful one. You have to read the textbook, underline the important words, underline the important sentences, understand, and then you can write the answers beautifully. That's all for today. If you have any doubts, please do reach out. Thank you.